Today is the 19th of December, 2024, and in today's video, we're going to talk about a plane crash that occurred earlier today, Thursday, at the home of a Buffalo Bills player named Dion Dawkins. Now, as always, we review the synchronicity and numerology of news stories, and quite commonly, how these stories relate to the world of sports. Now, once again, we have more or less made an accurate prediction. Down in the description below, you'll find a video on Cody's channel where I was a guest to talk about a plane crash that occurred on December 6th. Now, in this video, we talk about how there is a major plane crash riddle connected to the date December 19th, which is today. This all has to do with Donald Trump and his mercurial age. Trump, a character who has been connected to plane crashes since even before he was born, as I discuss in that video. Right around 20 minutes, we get into that part. Now, to make this especially strange, just yesterday, I made a post and did this video on the earthquake that occurred in the island nation of Vanuatu on December 17th. And that video focuses on a powerful riddle that connects the earthquake to the Buffalo Bills and their running back, James Cook. So ask yourself, what are the odds that on December 19th, the date that we discussed being connected to plane crashes just a week ago, that a plane crash occurs at the home of a Buffalo Bills player? And this is the kind of thing that sometimes I lose words for how remarkable this language is. And once you understand the code that the mainstream media is using, you can literally get in front of news stories before they happen. And this is another perfect example. Now, my last video talked about Pope Francis because the earthquake in Vanuatu was on the Pope's birthday. And indeed, this will be a topic of this video as well. Now, when it comes to plane crashes, remember how a plane crash was a focus of the film Donnie Darko, which was released in the year 2001, the same year as the 9/11 attacks. In fact, the movie first premiered at Sundance Film Festival on the date 1/19, which has the same digits, of course, as 9/11. And today's plane crash in Buffalo, or East Aurora more accurately, happened on Jake Gyllenhaal's 44th birthday. That's right, today, Gyllenhaal celebrates his birthday. So what we'll do in this video is explain all of the numerical connections that give us today's news story. In fact, this wasn't even the only news story regarding a plane crash today. Notice how Dion Dawkins was born in the state of New Jersey. Well, just after I started my post, we got another breaking news story about a plane crash in New Jersey. This crash in New Jersey happened right around 4 p.m., and the police are reporting that 4 people were injured. 4 and 4. That stands out because today is Jake Gyllenhaal's 44th birthday. Now, of course, on this channel, we talk about the language of Gematria and how this numerical code under the language that most people don't even know exists is responsible for so much of this. And think about how D is the 4th letter. So in Gematria, 4-4 is DD. This brings us to the movie Donnie Darko, which has those DD initials. Today's plane crash was at the home of Dion Dawkins, another DD character. And if you consider that the Trump family name used to be Drumpf, D-R-U-M-P-F, Donald Trump could have been also another double D character. Now, in the video that me and Bobby were on for Cody's channel, we talk about how this is all synced to Mercury, the Roman god of traveling, messages, communication. But we talk about this with plane crashes because, of course, travelers step on airplanes. Dion Dawkins is from the city of Rahway, New Jersey. And how interesting is it that Rahway is the global headquarters for a drug company called Merck & Co. Well, Merck is, of course, a nod to Mercury. Consider how hospitals and medical industries commonly use the hermetic wand. I'm blanking on the name of it, the caduceus, which belongs to Mercury in Roman mythology. So on the date of today's crash, once again, Donald Trump turned exactly 326 mercurial years old. And this is a number that connects him to JFK, of course, who was assassinated on the 326th day of the year. But notice how in a cipher called Satanic Gematria, which is centered around the number 666, don't forget, Donald Trump set to become the new president exactly 666 months after the first moon landing. Well, in this method, the name Dawkins equals 326. So how perfect that on Trump's 326th mercurial birthday, we get a plane crash at the home of a guy with 326 Gematria. Also worth pointing out, this happened 326 days before the date November 9th, which is another 9/11 or 11/9 date. The numbers 326 and the date November 9th both have that 119 Gematria. Of course, 119, the digits in the September 11th attacks back in 2001, the same year that Donnie Darko came out. Now, if you saw my video yesterday, you would have noticed that there's a big skull and bones riddle at play for this event. In fact, I put the skull and bones logo inside the Buffalo Bills logo. Now, yesterday I pointed out that Buffalo Bills has matching 426 Gematria with Yale in the Latin method of Gematria, which, once again, I believe is the most significant cipher in the study. Well, this is perfect for today's news because Dion Dawkins was born on April 26th, the date written 426. Not only that, but Dawkins was drafted 63rd in the NFL draft. Well, the main Buffalo Bills player that I talked about yesterday was James Cook, who shares a name with the man who discovered Vanuatu. But look at how James Cook was also drafted 63rd. Something else to consider is that Dion Dawkins wears number 73 for the Buffalo Bills. And 73 is the number I started yesterday's video off with, because the earthquake in Vanuatu was a 7.3 earthquake on a date with 73 numerology in a nation that celebrates its independence on 7/30. So all of this is connected to the riddle I explored just yesterday. Remember, Order of the Skull and Bones and Skull and Crossbones both equal 263. Both James Cook and Dion Dawkins drafted in the second round with the 63rd pick. Drafted to the city of Buffalo, which appropriately sums to 63. Just like Vanuatu earthquake. Now, even though Dion Dawkins plays on the Bills' offensive line, he's actually scored 2 touchdowns in his career. 2 receiving touchdowns where the lineman reports eligible and then catches a short yard pass. Well, intriguingly, Dion Dawkins made his first touchdown against the New York Jets. Perfect. Now that a small jet has crashed in his yard, essentially. And shout out to Cody, who helped me with this decode. I think it's past his bedtime right now in Germany, but definitely helped me out with some of these finds. Notice how today's crash was 2,230 days after his touchdown against the Jets. Here we have the digits 223, part of that skull and crossbones code. Of course, the secret society that uses 322 on its emblem. Dion Dawkins has a strong skull and bones connection to the Pope as well. Notice how the Pope was elected 322 days after Dawkins' birthday. Well, when Dion was born, the Pope had the digits 295 in his age, with zeros inside, but zeros are ignored in numerology. And 295 is the ordinal gematria of the number 322. Also, Skull and Bone Society, 295 in gematria. Now, another reason this 295 stood out to me is because when you measure from the birthday of Donald Trump to the birthday of Bills player Dion Dawkins, notice how they were born exactly 592 lunations apart. A lunation, of course, measures the lunar phase, the time it takes between new moon to new moon. And 592 is the reverse of 295, which is the number that connects Dawkins to the Pope. So let's talk now about the movie Donnie Darko and how the release of this film connects to this plane crash as well, which, again, happened on Jake Gyllenhaal's 44th birthday. 44 was another number I mentioned yesterday in my video about Vanuatu, which has gematria of 44, and there was a big earthquake there. Earthquake also equals 44. And it was all synced to the Bills running back named Cook. Cook summing to 44, and now someone has died in a plane crash connected to this same riddle. Kill equals 44. Today's news falls exactly 1,248 weeks after the premiere of Donnie Darko. Those familiar with numerology on this channel know that 1248 is the Latin value of the Tower, which is the card of the tarot that essentially depicts the 9/11 attacks, people falling from burning buildings. 9/11, really the ultimate plane crash riddle in the United States. When Donnie Darko had its wide release in October of 2001, Dawkins was 2,740 days old. Using capital letters in gematria, which maintains the alphabetic order, but adds 26 for every capital letter, the name Jacob Benjamin Gyllenhaal sums to 274. But check out his gematria in the most significant methods, Latin and ordinal. The name Jacob Benjamin Gyllenhaal sums to 195 and 196. These are the same digits in Dion Dawkins' age today for the crash, 11,195 days. If you include the end date, this becomes 11,196. So how perfect. And just looking at this again, Jacob Benjamin Gyllenhaal, 195, 196, Dion Dawkins with the 195 and the 196. But of course there's more. If you instead look at Dawkins' age for the premiere of the film in January of 01, he was 2,460 days old. And in the other capital letter cipher, capitals mixed, Jake's common name sums to 246. In the trigonal method, Jake Gyllenhaal equals 882. I point that out because Dion Dawkins was born during Brown lunation number 882. Today, Pope Francis is 88 years and 2 days old. We'll talk more about the Pope again, but all roads really do seem to lead to Rome when it comes to these events. Another 88, too, is that Donnie Darko takes place in the year 88. Here we are, 2 days after the Pope's 88th birthday, which is when the Vanuatu earthquake occurred. So as I mentioned earlier, Donnie Darko and Dion Dawkins share the DD initials, D the fourth letter. So this is a 44. Today, Jake Gyllenhaal's 44th birthday. Well, notice how Pope Francis sums to 404 Latin. Very similar to Bishop of Rome, his official job title, which equals 440. Earlier this year, I did a video on the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse, which is a bridge that not only has Pope Francis's name in it, but there were a wealth of connections to Pope Francis. And let's see, this was a while ago now, so this video's down here. But yeah, the Key Bridge being destroyed. I think this video is linked down in the description below. We're going to talk a little bit about that event as well, because that happened on the date March 26th, or 326. Earlier in the video, I mentioned how this is all circles back to the number 326. But first, I want to point out this 9/11 riddle. The biggest air disaster in the United States happened on 9/11/01. Now, if you flip this date upside down, it kind of looks like this. 1116. Well, notice how this plane crash occurred at 11:16 this morning. When Pope Francis was elected as the leader of the Catholic Church, it was during Brown lunation 1116. In reverse, Francis and Vatican both equal 119. And how interesting that Dion Dawkins lives in East Aurora, New York, where this crash occurred today. East Aurora sums to 119. But he was born in the state of New Jersey, and New Jersey also equals 119. So, of course, we also get a plane crash in New Jersey on the same day. Dion Dawkins was even born on the 116th day of the year, the upside-down 9/11. And measuring between the birthdays of Jake Gyllenhaal and Dion Dawkins, we get this prime chain to the number 119. I don't want to get too deep into prime numbers here, but definitely a 119 connection between their birthdays. But what about this? Measuring from the date Francis became Pope to the date of today's plane crash is a span of 4,300 days. And of course, 43 is the reduction or Pythagorean value of the phrase plane crash. Also in that cipher, the name Gyllenhaal equals 43. So does the state of New Jersey, 43. With the S exception, Francis is a 43. Dion Dawkins plays football, which equals 43. A sport that was essentially invented by Yale University. Yale equals 43. And Yale is the headquarters to Skull and Bones, which is definitely a big part of this riddle. So back to this Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse, which, again, I did a video on right after it happened, and naturally it was all synced to Francis the Pope, just as it was synced to Francis Scott Key. Well, that bridge collapse occurred at 1:28 in the morning. And in the alphabetic order, bridge collapse equals 128. A couple years earlier, there was a bridge collapse in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, on the date 128. This was another one I did a video on. January 28th, 128. And that was at Frick Park in Pittsburgh. Notice how Frick also has the 128. Also a Skull and Bones number, both Brotherhood and Order of the Skull and Bones with 128 Gematria. Dion Dawkins is from Rahway, New Jersey, home to the Merck Company. Merck equals 128. Well, today's plane crash was exactly 1,208 weeks after the wide release of Donnie Darko back in the year 2001. Dion Dawkins was born 128 days after Jake Gyllenhaal's birthday. And when you write out Jake Gyllenhaal's full name, it has Gematria of 128. Well, today's plane crash at Dawkins' house was 128 days before his birthday. When Dawkins scored his first touchdown against the Jets, he was 1,280 weeks old. Appropriately, Keybridge, Gyllenhaal, drones, all with the same Gematria. And I talk about drones here because when you think about New Jersey, well, if you've been to any news website over the past couple of weeks, all you see is talk about drones, mysterious drones flying around the skies. Are they aliens? Are they government spacecraft? What is this? Well, consider how today's crash was 269 days after the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse. Dawkins' touchdown against the Jets was 169 days after Francis became the Pope. And 269 is the Gematria of drones. Drones also equals 75 and 39. And look at today's date numerology, 75 and 39. 75 is also the value of Lakewood, New Jersey, where we got the other plane crash to occur today. So once again, I mean, had I simply decoded this event after it happened, it should have been undeniable enough that there's something deeper going on here. But also consider that we discussed this particular date in connection with a plane crash just last week. And this is very similar to something we called out a few months ago. Now, back in September, see if I can find this video right here. Superstream number 86. Now, this was all very appropriate, and sometimes organic numerology ends up taking the cake. The planet Mercury equals 86. The man on the left of the screen here is a guy named Mercury Morris. And the day before Mercury Morris died, this man was a running back for the Miami Dolphins. I was on Cody's stream, and I mentioned there's a riddle going on with the city of Miami, and we're also seeing something connected to Mercury. And the next day, a Miami running back named Mercury Morris died. Because again, when you understand the code, you can get in front of the news stories before they happen. So quick shout out to those in the chat, especially Chance, who I haven't talked to in a long time. And yeah, I would be willing to do a podcast again. I think it's been at least probably a couple years since I was on. So if you want to hit me up, we can probably do that. But yeah, it's decodes like this where you learn why this work is so heavily censored. And no matter how long I stream on YouTube, no matter how many years I destroy the news using the same ciphers, the same measurement techniques, I still usually get the same amount of viewers. And that's fine. You know, as long as this information is getting out and more people are learning about it, that's all that's important to me. But I don't feel like the country at large is learning fast enough. You know, the level of tomfoolery, trickery, and skullduggery in this nation, if you'll excuse my 60s vocabulary, it's really off the charts, and it's far worse than most people realize. So one must ask themselves, did this crash even happen? I mean, we didn't get any photos of it. And if so, was it just a drone that was shot down? As we clearly see this drone riddle connected to the alert, or to the bridge collapse too. I think I said the word alert because I'm reading the chat at the same time here. And yeah, people generally don't get alerts when I go live, which is to be understood. It's, again, this isn't the only channel that happens to. You know, this is a channel that used to get almost 500,000 views, or at least a few 100,000, but they had to put the kibosh on that. So, no, I don't see myself giving up anytime soon. This, whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, this has become my life. And I'm not going to stop until we course correct in this country and get these liars out of power once and for all. All right, so with all that nastiness out of the way, that's going to do it for this video. Thanks to everybody popping in, whether you're watching live or archived. Please do like, share, subscribe, etc. And if you really enjoyed this video, there's also some links in the description for you to help support this work, which also helps keep the website online and gives you more powerful tools and options for the Gematrinator calculator that I developed back in 2017 and have been improving ever since, although I think we're due for another improvement soon. So, all right, everybody, with that, peace, love, God bless. We'll talk to y'all next time. See ya.